Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. Today, we bring you the heart-pounding tale of a galaxy on the brink of destruction. The Galactic Confederation is locked in a desperate struggle against the terrifying Artta, a race of conquerors who destroy entire worlds without mercy. But when hope seems lost and the best fleets in the galaxy fail, an unexpected force enters the fight: humanity. Led by the fearless Captain Sarah Chen and the crew of the UEES Nemesis, they embark on a mission unlike any other, using their unpredictable tactics to face an enemy unlike any the galaxy has ever seen. Join us as we follow the journey of a single ship, against impossible odds, and explore how humanity's greatest strength, its unpredictability, turns the tide of war. This is a battle not just for survival, but for the very future of the galaxy. Stay tuned, because the greatest weapon the universe has ever known is about to make its mark. Let the adventure begin. The Great Hall of the Galactic Confederation fell silent as the screen displayed a haunting image. Viden Prime, once a thriving world with 8 billion souls, was now nothing but ash and fire. The once pristine surface, dotted with bustling cities and advanced technology, now lay in ruins, consumed by an unrelenting blaze. The sheer scale of the devastation was overwhelming, and the horror of it spread throughout the room. A voice crackled through the tense silence. It belonged to Ambassador Thiever, her blue skin pale with worry. The image of Viden Prime flickered in the background as she pointed to it, her forearms trembling in response to the weight of the news. "This is the 12th world lost this year alone," she said. Her voice quivered with fear, yet it remained steady enough to convey the gravity of the situation. The pattern was clear: the Tarlo Artta, a ruthless and predatory species, were moving toward the core systems of the galaxy, and the Confederation had no way to stop them. The Tarlo Artta had proven themselves to be a force beyond any previous comprehension. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything the Confederation had ever encountered. For over 200 years, they had waged terror across the stars, annihilating any world in their path. They came without warning, struck without mercy, and left nothing but destruction in their wake. There was no system, no race, no civilization that had been able to halt their advance. The members of the Galactic Confederation exchanged worried glances, their faces marked by the fear of impending doom. The conference room, which had once been a place of hope and unity, now felt like a tomb. Every species present knew the gravity of the situation. Their most advanced weapons, their fastest ships, and their greatest minds had failed to stop the Tarlo Artta. Desperation filled the air, and the tension was palpable. As the room settled into a heavy silence, the Supreme Chancellor, his ancient form hunched and frail, stood slowly. He gazed at the assembled representatives with a weight that spoke of years of responsibility. "Our most advanced weapons cannot harm their shields," he stated in a voice filled with the bitter taste of defeat. "Our fastest ships cannot escape them. Our greatest minds cannot outsmart them." His words hung in the air, suffocating the room with an overwhelming sense of futility. The council members exchanged glances, their eyes revealing the unspoken truth: the Confederation was powerless in the face of this new enemy. The Tarlo Artta were relentless. The galaxy's most formidable defenses had failed, and now, nothing stood between them and the core worlds. Just as the room seemed to sink into the depths of despair, Ambassador Thiever's voice cut through the silence. Softly, but with a quiet strength, she spoke: "There is one option we have not tried." Her words immediately captured everyone's attention. The room grew still as every eye turned toward her. "The humans," she continued, her voice steady yet laced with a hint of uncertainty. "They've survived attacks when no one else has." The mention of humans caused a stir in the room. Some representatives exchanged skeptical looks, their expressions filled with doubt and disbelief. "Humans? They're primitives, barely out of the Stone Age," one delegate scoffed. Another added, "They've never even been to space for long." But Thiever was resolute. "They fight differently," she said, her voice now carrying a note of conviction. "Their unpredictability is their strength." The room fell silent again, and for a moment, the council members were lost in thought. The idea of turning to humans, a species that had only recently joined the stars, a species that many in the Confederation had viewed as too volatile and chaotic, seemed like an act of desperation. But Thiever's words lingered in the air, forcing them to reconsider. "What are you suggesting?" asked the Supreme Chancellor, his voice weary yet filled with a glimmer of curiosity. Thiever hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "We need them to fight the Artta," she said firmly. "No other species has survived even one of their raids. The humans have. Perhaps they can offer the chaos we need to fight them." Though many were still skeptical, the seed of hope had been planted. The room buzzed with conversations, some filled with fear, others with reluctant agreement. Could the humans, a species still in its infancy on the galactic stage, really be the galaxy's last hope? The Council had no choice but to consider the possibility. The human race, despite its chaotic and unpredictable nature, might be their best shot at survival. The decision was made. The fate of the galaxy would rest on the shoulders of a single ship, a human warship, led by Captain Sarah Chen. The Confederation's greatest minds, their most advanced fleets, and their strongest warriors had all failed. Now, they would turn to the humans, a species that had survived through sheer unpredictability, raw courage, and an unyielding will to fight. But could the humans truly stand against the might of the Artta? Only time would tell. The Galactic Confederation had long looked at Earth as a peculiar, primitive world, one that had only recently broken free from its own struggles to reach the stars. Their ships, sleek and glowing with energy, had been built for peace, exploration, and order. But now, it seemed, the galaxy was on the brink of annihilation, and there was only one species left that could provide the spark of unpredictability the Confederation so desperately needed. Earth. A single Confederation ship, small and unadorned compared to their usual fleet, descended through Earth's atmosphere. Its hull was etched with alien symbols, shining faintly in the daylight. The craft, unlike the sleek starships of the Galactic Confederation, had an old, battle-worn look. It had been hastily constructed, its purpose singular and clear. It was not here to admire the beauty of Earth or engage in diplomatic discussions. No, it was a silent, heavy message. The humans, already aware of the Federation's failed attempts to stop the Artta, watched as the ship hovered above a barren, windswept desert. A few moments later, a signal was sent to Earth Command, the first message in decades that wasn't part of the regular intergalactic exchange. The Confederation's plea was simple, brief, and haunting. "Help us fight the Artta. You are our last hope." It was not an invitation of camaraderie. It was a desperate cry for survival. The message resonated through Earth's military command and leadership, reaching those who had spent years dreaming of an opportunity like this, an invitation to join the fight on behalf of the galaxy. But this wasn't a call for partnership or exploration. It was a summons to war, a war against an enemy unlike any Earth had ever faced. The Artta had devastated countless worlds, and the Confederation had tried everything in their power to stop them. But Earth, the planet of human survival, the home of a species whose history was built on struggle, on chaos, and on adapting against all odds, was now at the heart of the solution. The message was undeniable. They were their last hope. The leaders of Earth, having heard of the destruction on Viden Prime, knew their moment had arrived. This was not just a chance to defend themselves, it was a call to answer the ancient, hidden strength within humanity. The world's power structures quickly scrambled to respond. The gravity of the situation fell on all humanity as they grasped what was happening. For the first time in 30 years, Earth's military command received the message they had been waiting for, but it came wrapped in desperation, and not in the form they had expected. The response from Earth was swift and direct. There would be no hesitation. The military forces of Earth were efficient, but they knew they couldn't afford to waste time preparing an entire fleet. Instead, the message that would be sent to the Galactic Confederation was equally simple and stark: we will send one ship. The UEES Nemesis was humanity's best, a warship equipped with the finest technology and craftsmanship Earth had developed in the last 30 years. Its design was not the smooth, elegant curves of the Confederation ships, but rather a rugged, angular structure. Built for raw, unyielding power, the Nemesis had been constructed using Earth's most advanced combat engineering. Its weapons were forged to deliver chaos in every burst, and its shield technology was designed for durability rather than finesse. The Confederation representatives, upon hearing of Earth's decision, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The idea that one single human warship could stand against the might of the Artta, the species that had reduced entire civilizations to dust, seemed almost laughable. To them, it was a futile gesture. How could one small ship, no matter how well armed, possibly stand a chance against an enemy fleet of unimaginable power? The Nemesis was a vessel of contradictions. While the Confederation ships glided through space with an air of silent elegance, the Nemesis screamed with its raw, industrial design. Its thrusters burned hot, and its weaponry was based on Earth's most chaotic technologies born of humanity's history of war, of survival, and of unpredictability. The human leaders knew they were sending a ship into the unknown, with very little understanding of what would come next. The Nemesis was not a flagship with countless troops. It was a single vessel, its crew as diverse as Earth itself. There was no grand fleet, no perfect plan. There were only the crew, a ragtag group of soldiers, engineers, and scientists who had never before faced a galactic-scale threat, but who were prepared to fight with everything they had. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm, her face calm, but her heart raced with anticipation. She had read every report, listened to every piece of advice from the Galactic Confederation, and seen the desperation in their eyes. But Earth's response was not just out of duty, it was personal. Earth had seen war and destruction before. Earth had survived the ravages of time, and now it had something that no one else had: the wild, unpredictable nature of humanity. Where the Confederation fought with perfect formations and calculated moves, Earth's greatest strength was its ability to break the rules of warfare, to adapt, and to think in ways that no other species could. As Captain Chen stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, she turned to her crew. Their mission was clear: survive, disrupt, and make sure the Artta never saw humanity coming. The Nemesis was not the Confederation's perfect weapon. But it was all Earth had. And for Captain Chen, that was enough. With a steady hand, she gave the order to launch. The Nemesis would make its way to the heart of the Artta's invasion, not as a mere participant in the war, but as the spearhead of an unpredictable strategy that no one else could comprehend. If they failed, Earth would fall, but if they succeeded, they would change the galaxy forever. In the midst of the stars, one ship was all humanity needed to write its new chapter in galactic history. A single human warship against an entire enemy fleet. Against all odds, this was the last hope of the galaxy. And the Nemesis was ready. The room was charged with an energy of quiet desperation, its silence broken only by the faint hum of the Galactic Confederation's technology. The Grand Chamber, with its luminous walls and holographic projections, seemed almost too sterile, too perfect for what was about to happen. In the center of the room, a vast circular table surrounded by representatives from countless alien species loomed. Their eyes, wide with worry, flicked toward the entrance as Captain Sarah Chen strode in, her uniform a stark contrast to the polished attire of the Confederation officers. Chen entered with the calm confidence of someone who had faced death and come back victorious. Her dark eyes scanned the room, noting the varied alien species, creatures with scales, those with multiple arms, others with strange appendages or wings. The fear in their eyes was almost palpable. They had failed for over 2 centuries. The Artta had razed their worlds, destroyed their fleets, and obliterated their strongest defenses. Now, this human woman, barely out of the fledgling stages of galactic interaction, was supposed to lead them to victory. As she walked towards the center of the room, the air seemed to change. There was a stillness that followed her, an almost magnetic presence that commanded the room's attention. She stood tall and unflinching, her posture relaxed yet powerful, as if she were fully aware of the enormity of the task before her, but also confident in her ability to see it through. Captain Chen, Ambassador Thiever greeted her, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "We've seen the power of the Artta. Their ships move faster, strike harder, and their tactics are beyond anything we've ever encountered. You stand before us with a single ship. What can one vessel possibly do?" Captain Chen's gaze locked with the ambassador's. She could feel the weight of their skepticism in the air, but she didn't flinch. She'd faced worse odds in her life, and every battle she had fought had been on her terms, not anyone else's. "I understand your doubt," Chen began, her voice calm, but carrying a strength that immediately drew attention. "You fight like machines. Perfect formations, perfect tactics. You've been perfect for 200 years, and still, you lose." Her eyes scanned the room, meeting each of the representatives' gazes. "Maybe it's time to try something else. Something unpredictable." The room was silent. Her words cut through the tension like a knife. The aliens around the table exchanged nervous glances. The idea of abandoning their calculated perfection, their centuries-old methods, felt unnatural to them. But Chen's words echoed in the silence, each one weighing more heavily than the last. She wasn't offering the perfect solution. She wasn't promising they would win with superior strength or speed. No. What she was offering was the only thing they had left, the raw unpredictability of humanity. Captain Chen stood tall, her gaze unwavering as she turned to face the holographic projection of the enemy fleet. The room fell silent, and the screen flickered with images of the Tarlo Artta's latest destruction. Planets reduced to dust, civilizations wiped out in an instant. It was a terrifying reminder of what was at stake. "We don't have the luxury of perfect," she continued. "Your fleets, your advanced weapons, your shields, they're all designed to counter a perfect enemy. But the Tarlo Artta are not perfect. They are a force of destruction, but they are predictable. They've never had to adapt. They rely on brute force, on overwhelming numbers, and on tactics they've used for centuries. They never see unpredictability coming." Chen moved closer to the table, her fingers brushing lightly across the edges of the digital map. "Our plan is simple. We don't try to match them in strength or tactics. We use what we have. The Nemesis is not an advanced starship like your fleets. It's rough, built for survival, not for perfection. We fight on our terms, not theirs." She paused, letting her words settle before continuing. "We don't need perfect formations. We need chaos. We need confusion. We need to get inside their heads, break their patterns, and force them to play by our rules." There was a murmur around the room as Chen's words took root. A few alien representatives exchanged uncomfortable looks, while others, the more adventurous ones, seemed intrigued. They had heard of humans before, a species that fought wars for survival, that turned the very chaos of their history into an advantage. But this was different. The stakes had never been higher. "We're going to break every rule," Chen said, her voice steady. "We'll hit them where it hurts, where they least expect it. No fancy maneuvers. No perfect formations. We strike fast, we strike hard, and we don't give them time to breathe. The Nemesis will slip past their fleets, disrupt their strategies, and force them into a corner. But we won't do it alone." The room's atmosphere shifted. The delegation of aliens leaned in, captivated by her words. They had seen destruction before. They had seen terror unfold, but never like this. Never had they been presented with such a radical idea. "What's the catch?" High Marshal KTH, the reptilian officer, asked. "You make it sound easy, but there are millions of lives at stake. One ship against the Artta? You really think we'll stand a chance?" Chen's eyes were calm but unyielding. "One ship is all we need. With the Nemesis, we'll carve out a path where they never expected one. We'll use their own arrogance against them. They'll think we're outmatched. They'll think they've already won. And that's when we'll strike. The Artta won't know what hit them." There was no further debate. Captain Chen had given them something they hadn't had in 200 years, hope. And more importantly, a plan. Not one of certainty, but of possibility. A possibility fueled by the unpredictable nature of humanity. "We've done the impossible before," Chen concluded. "We'll do it again." As the plan took shape, the crew of the Nemesis prepared themselves for the battle of their lives. It was a mission that would test everything they knew about war, about strategy, and about survival. They would face the Artta, not by matching them head-on, but by throwing everything they had into the unknown. It was humanity's time to fight back, and they would do it in a way the galaxy would never forget. The cold, sterile hum of the Nemesis filled the bridge as Captain Sarah Chen stood silently, her eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space before her. The stars seemed so far away, their distant lights twinkling like faint whispers of the past, but now, the threat was close, very close. The Tarlo Artta fleet was moving fast, their ships monstrous and terrifying in both size and design. They had no mercy, and they had no hesitation. Chen's grip tightened on the armrest of her seat as the data displayed on the screen showed the incoming enemy forces. The Nemesis was far smaller, far more vulnerable than the sleek, devastating warships of the Artta. But what they lacked in firepower, they made up for with ingenuity. The Nemesis had been re-engineered, adapted to survive against overwhelming odds, not by brute strength or firepower, but by stealth, unpredictability, and above all, human creativity. "Prepare for lightspeed drop," Chen commanded, her voice calm and unwavering. Her crew worked efficiently, pulling together the last-minute adjustments necessary to initiate their daring strategy. In the vastness of space, perfect tactics might be a dead end, but the chaos would make them the unknown element, the wildcard the Artta wouldn't see coming. With a sharp flick of her wrist, the Nemesis pulled out of lightspeed travel. The transition was jarring, the sudden stillness of the ship unsettling after the breakneck speed they'd been traveling at. The ship lurched slightly as it entered normal space, its movements smooth and precise. Chen's strategy was simple: hide in plain sight. "We drop behind the asteroid field," Chen murmured to herself. "We stay quiet, stay hidden." The massive asteroid field loomed before them like a jagged curtain, dark and ominous. It was a natural camouflage, a perfect shield. The Nemesis slipped into the shadow of the nearest asteroid, its hull absorbing the surrounding darkness. Every light on the ship dimmed, every sound was muffled. The Nemesis became as much a part of the void as the rocks themselves. Outside the ship, the Artta fleet moved forward, their hulking forms gliding through the dark abyss with chilling precision. The fleet's commander, somewhere aboard one of the monstrous ships, would have been watching for any sign of the human vessel, any attempt to fight or flee. But the Nemesis offered nothing. Not a signal, not a trace. The seconds stretched into minutes, each one a delicate thread in the tapestry of risk they were weaving. The tension was palpable, even in the calmness of the Nemesis bridge. "Ready," Lieutenant Jackson called, his voice low, controlled. "The enemy's too close for comfort." Chen nodded without a word. This was the first gamble, the first test. Would they be detected? Or would they slip unnoticed, an unknown shadow in the face of overwhelming power? Chen's eyes narrowed as she prepared for the second phase of the plan. This wasn't about winning the battle, not yet. It was about survival, about making the Artta doubt their own strategies. The Nemesis remained motionless, the asteroid field providing cover as it waited. And then, in an instant, the moment arrived. Without warning, the ship surged forward, darting out from behind the asteroid in a single, fluid motion. The Nemesis shot out of its hiding place like a bolt of lightning, cutting through space with astonishing speed. The crew barely had time to react as the ship came to life, flashing bright against the void of space, its engines thrumming with power. "Launch a decoy burst," Chen ordered. "On my mark, deploy." A sudden surge of energy pulsed outward, creating a bright, false trail that blazed through space. It was a decoy, designed to draw the Artta's attention. The ship's lights flickered briefly, mimicking a full-scale attack, and then the Nemesis disappeared back into the shadows before the Artta fleet had time to react. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Chen ordered, her voice cold and precise. The Nemesis weaved through space with expert agility, avoiding direct confrontation at all costs. No direct shots, no grand standoffs. Just a hit-and-run tactic designed to disrupt. The Nemesis moved like a shadow, swift, unpredictable, and always vanishing before the enemy could strike back. The Artta ships were designed for overwhelming force, they had no room in their strategy for the kind of unpredictability that humans thrived on. A single pulse fired from the Nemesis struck one of the Artta ship's communication arrays, disabling it completely. The crew watched as the enemy ship's systems flickered, its once steady movements now hesitant and confused. "They didn't see that coming," Lieutenant Jackson murmured as the ship completed another sharp turn, diving back behind a nearby asteroid. The Nemesis had fired its only shot, and now it was gone, disappearing into the labyrinth of asteroids before the Artta fleet could properly retaliate. Captain Chen's eyes were locked on the screens, tracking the chaos unfolding. The Artta fleet was beginning to break formation, their ships scattering in search of the rogue human ship. The Nemesis had done its job not by destroying, but by disrupting, throwing the enemy off balance. The humans were doing what the Artta never expected, they were fighting with a wild unpredictability, and it was working. Communications disrupted, reported Dr. Vikram, the quiet scientist who had been working tirelessly in the background. The Artta are scrambling their communications. They've lost contact with one another. Now we hit them again, Chen said, her voice steady. We're going to keep them guessing. They won't know where we'll strike next. The Nemesis once again slid back into the shadows, its sleek silhouette blending with the asteroids. The Artta had been so sure of their superiority, so confident that their sheer power would crush any enemy. Now, they were fighting an unknown, a force they couldn't predict. In the heart of the Nemesis, the crew shared a quiet, unspoken moment of triumph. They had struck the first blow, not by overwhelming force, but by exploiting their enemy's biggest flaw, their predictability. And as Captain Chen stood at the helm, watching the chaos unfold, she knew that the battle had only just begun. But for the first time, the tide had shifted. The Artta had been forced to play by human rules, and in this battle, it was the unpredictable, the chaotic, the creative force of humanity that had taken the first step toward victory. As the Nemesis drifted deeper into Artta-controlled space, Captain Chen and her crew found themselves faced with a most unexpected, yet necessary, alliance. The Maloian species, known for their peaceful nature and remarkable telepathic abilities, had once been observers, not participants in the galaxy's wars. But in the face of annihilation, even the most pacifistic beings had to choose a side. The Maloians' role was clear: provide their unique abilities to the humans, and together, they might just stand a chance. The Maloian telepathic capabilities were unlike anything the Nemesis crew had encountered. They could communicate without words, their minds touching and intertwining with others in ways that went beyond speech. A single thought could ripple through the minds of everyone in the room, and with it, a flood of emotions, images, and visions. To many, it was overwhelming, but to Captain Chen and her crew, it was a gift. In the dim-lit conference room aboard the Nemesis, Captain Chen stood with Trill, the Maloian elder, and the rest of the Maloian delegation. Their skin shimmered in the low light, translucent and ethereal, giving off a faint glow. Their eyes, large and dark, stared intently at Chen, their unspoken thoughts swirling around the room. The air felt thick, as if the very fabric of reality was vibrating around them, bending to the will of the telepathic bond that had formed between the two species. "We will help you," Trill said, his voice not spoken but felt in the mind of every human present. "We sensed the movements of the Artta. We can help you predict their strikes before they even think them." Captain Chen gave a slight nod, acknowledging the power of this gift. With the Maloian telepathic abilities, they could anticipate the Artta's next move, predicting their fleet's movements with unsettling accuracy. The Artta's pride, their reliance on brute force and rigid tactics, was now their greatest weakness. With the Maloians' help, the Nemesis could become a shadow in the dark, striking before the Artta even realized what was happening. The crew of the Nemesis quickly adapted to this new power. Major Rivera, leading a small team of soldiers, would be the first to experience the full extent of the Maloian connection. They learned to move as one, humans guided by the clarity of the Maloian telepathic map, tracking enemy ships with precision, even before they appeared on radar. The alliance, though born from desperation, became more powerful with each passing day. The Maloian gave the Nemesis the edge it had so desperately needed. They could move faster, act smarter, and predict the Artta's every move. The humans, with their unpredictable strategies and willingness to break the rules, now had the advantage of foresight. The room was filled with silent intensity as Chan and Trill focused their minds together. Images of the Artta fleet appeared, flickering images of their ships, their exact positions, their paths. The feeling was alien, almost intrusive, but it was power. Power that the Nemesis had never known before. "We will strike at their weakness," Chen said quietly, breaking the silence. Her crew stood by, ready for the next phase of the mission. With the Maloians' help, their chances of success had increased exponentially, but the true battle was yet to come. Major Rivera's team had been given the dangerous task of infiltrating an Artta ship, a mission that required both stealth and precision. The Nemesis had struck once again, luring the Artta into a trap with their erratic, unpredictable tactics. While the enemy fleet scrambled to respond to multiple false targets, Rivera's team managed to slip aboard one of the Artta's ships undetected. The ship was a monstrosity of cold steel, its vast corridors and high, dark ceilings filled with machinery that pulsed with a sinister energy. Rivera moved silently through the ship's underbelly, her footsteps muffled by the thick metallic flooring. The Artta's technology, far beyond anything the Nemesis possessed, hummed with power, yet the atmosphere was eerily quiet. As Rivera's team approached the central chamber, they found the walls lined with rows of tubes, each filled with strange, glowing creatures. The creatures, alien in every sense, appeared to be suspended in a state of animation. Some had humanoid features, others more insect-like, but all were eerily still, their eyes wide open and staring into nothingness. Rivera approached one of the tubes, her breath catching as she saw the truth for the first time. Inside the tube was a creature, its limbs twisted and contorted, a shell of a once living being. It was alive, yet not. The creature's eyes blinked, but its movements were mechanical, controlled by something else. Rivera felt the distinct chill of horror crawl up her spine as she realized what this meant. These were not mere prisoners. They were slaves. She turned sharply as the rest of her team moved into the chamber. They had come here to gather intel, to learn about the Artta's tactics and strategies, but what they found was far worse. The Artta did not just conquer worlds, they consumed them. They enslaved entire species, using mind control technology to bend other beings to their will. The true Artta were few in number, but they controlled the galaxy not with force, but through manipulation, using other species as their soldiers, their tools. Mind control, Rivera whispered in disbelief as she studied the equipment attached to the creatures. Small devices were implanted into their brains, constantly transmitting signals that controlled their every thought, their every action. These beings were nothing more than puppets, their will stolen, their minds erased. The Artta did not just destroy civilizations, they made them serve. Rivera quickly signaled for the rest of the team to retreat, their mission now transformed from gathering intelligence to understanding how to stop this horrific system. They had come seeking knowledge of the Artta's tactics, but what they found was far darker. The Artta weren't just an enemy to be defeated. They were a force, a collective of nightmares. As Rivera and her team returned to the Nemesis, the weight of their discovery weighed heavily on their minds. This was no longer just a fight for survival, this was a fight for freedom. The Artta were not just conquerors, they were enslavers. They had used the galaxy's other species as tools to maintain control, bending minds and breaking spirits. Captain, Rivera's voice crackled through the calms as she returned to the Nemesis, we have to stop them. Not just defeat them, but destroy the very system they've created. These creatures, they're not just enemies. They're victims. Captain Chen stood silent for a moment, absorbing the information. The plan had changed. The stakes had risen. What had seemed like a straightforward war now held a far more sinister implication. The Nemesis was no longer fighting for survival alone, they were fighting for the freedom of countless enslaved species across the galaxy. Prepare yourselves, Chen said finally, her voice low but steady. We're not just going to fight the Artta. We're going to free the galaxy. And with that, the Nemesis powered up, ready to face not just the enemy, but the horrifying truth that lay at the heart of the Artta's control. With every passing second, the Nemesis drew closer to the heart of Artta territory, the Perseus Void, a place steeped in darkness and uncertainty. The silence on board was heavy, thick with the knowledge that the stakes could not be higher. The galaxy's future depended on what Captain Chen and her crew were about to do. The information they had gleaned from the Artta ship, though invaluable, had revealed the full extent of the enemy's terrifying power, the mind control devices that had enslaved entire species for centuries. The idea of dismantling the system was both thrilling and horrifying. Captain Chen knew that disabling the signal would sever the chains holding the Artta's enslaved forces, but the consequences of that action would be catastrophic. Many of the enslaved beings, transformed by the control devices, could not survive without them. But there was no choice. The war had to end. The galaxy had to be freed. The Nemesis floated, hidden in the shadows of a massive asteroid, as the Artta fleet moved closer. The enemy ships, sleek and unyielding, formed a tight perimeter, their scanners scanning every inch of space, expecting the Nemesis to strike in a predictable pattern. But humans weren't predictable. The ship's hull trembled slightly as the crew prepared for what was about to come. Chen could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her, but there was no room for hesitation. Every decision, every move, needed to be calculated to perfection. The Nemesis was outmatched in firepower and numbers, but it had one thing the Artta had never anticipated: the ability to think differently. Captain Chen's voice echoed through the quiet of the bridge as she issued her orders.
We wait until they're close enough to make our move.
No premature attacks, no rash decisions.
Stay focused. We strike where it hurts.
The crew worked seamlessly, as though they had always been part of a single mind. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Artta's command center, disrupt the mind control signal that kept millions enslaved, and do so without being detected. It was an impossible task, but one they were uniquely suited for. The Nemesis wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol of humanity's spirit: unpredictable, chaotic, and determined.
The time came.
The enemy fleet moved into the system, their ships surrounding a small, defenseless planet below. The Artta began their slaughter, beams of energy crashing down, turning cities to ash, as they always had.
Chen's gaze hardened. We won't let them destroy another world.
With a sharp motion, she gave the order.
The Nemesis shot out of hiding, moving with a speed and precision that took the Artta completely off guard. The ship didn't approach in a straight line or form perfect patterns. It danced through the void, weaving between asteroids and energy beams like a shadow, always one step ahead of the enemy. The Artta had no idea how to counter it.
Their ships attempted to lock onto the Nemesis, but the unpredictability of human tactics kept them constantly guessing. The first strike came suddenly, not with the full force of a military assault but with a sharp, unexpected blow. The Nemesis fired at a key Artta ship, damaging its shield systems but not destroying it. It was a distraction, a deliberate act to confuse the enemy.
The Artta were not used to being outsmarted like this.
They expected perfect formations and carefully executed strategies. But the Nemesis attacked from the unlikeliest of places, weaving through fire and falling behind enemy lines, using the chaos to their advantage.
Now! Chen ordered, her voice steady and commanding.
The crew responded in perfect synchronization. The Nemesis launched a barrage of missiles, not at the ships themselves but at their energy conduits, key points of their massive fleets that, when hit, would cause ripples of disarray and confusion. In the vacuum of space, there was no place to hide, no backup to call for. The Artta fleet staggered as the Nemesis disappeared into the shadows, and for the first time in a long while, the galaxy's mightiest conquerors were left in the dark.
But Chen's plan wasn't just to damage them. It was to disorient them, to scatter them into chaos. The Nemesis wasn't looking for glory or victory through brute force. It was about throwing the enemy off their game.
From their hiding spots, the crew moved swiftly, monitoring every change in the Artta fleet's movements.
Captain Chen wasn't interested in a straight-up battle.
She understood the importance of unpredictability, of breaking the rules that the Artta had come to rely on. She wasn't just fighting to win, she was fighting to outthink and outmaneuver them. The Nemesis became more than just a ship. It became the symbol of humanity's will to survive, and it was not about to be crushed. As the ship danced through the war zone, dodging enemy fire and causing further confusion, the rest of the crew worked frantically to access the central command station. Major Rivera and her Special Forces team, equipped with makeshift armor and human ingenuity, infiltrated the Artta flagship, cutting through its defenses with speed and precision.
They encountered resistance, but nothing they couldn't handle.
The information they were gathering could change everything.
Captain, we've reached the signal hub, Rivera reported through the comms. We're in position to upload the disruption code.
Chen's grip tightened on the command console.
It was the moment of truth.
The Artta were powerful, but they were predictable. They had never understood humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt, to think outside of the confines of strategy, and to use every ounce of creativity to stay one step ahead.
Do it, Chen ordered. The disruption code was sent, its wave pulsing out across the galaxy.
The signals that had enslaved the millions under the Artta's control began to falter. One by one, the enslaved forces began to break free from their mental chains, their minds waking from the nightmare that had held them in thrall for so long. But the victory wasn't without its costs. The disruption of the mind control signal caused a chain reaction, damaging the very neural systems that held the enslaved beings alive. Many of them perished, but their freedom was hard-won. As the Artta fleet retreated, floundering in confusion and anger, Captain Chen and her crew watched from the bridge. The Nemesis had done what no one thought was possible. They had struck a blow that would reverberate through the galaxy for generations. The mission was complete. But as the stars began to settle into their familiar positions, Captain Chen knew that this victory came at a price and that the future of the galaxy would never be the same again. The Nemesis had not only stopped the Artta, it had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. Unpredictable, unstoppable, and free. Thank you for joining us on today's incredible journey through the stars. Humanity's unexpected strength, resilience, and unpredictability have shown that even against overwhelming odds, there's always a chance for victory. The battle may be over, but the war is far from finished. As we continue to explore the mysteries of space and the power of human spirit, we invite you to stay tuned for more thrilling adventures. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing these epic tales and bringing you more heart-pounding moments from the galaxy's most unexpected heroes. Remember, the universe is vast, but so is our will to fight. So, keep watching, keep dreaming, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and never forget the greatest weapon we have is humanity.